It has been described as the Pearl of Africa, Uganda, and in 1986, a general came to power, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, up to 2021, where they went to election on the 14th of 2021 January. Now, Uganda democracy has been in question, and today my guest is Joy Chenyenyozi. She has been here before, and she's going to analyze the politics of Uganda. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How will you describe democracy of Uganda?
I do not think that Uganda's rule can be described as a democracy in its current state. This is because the elements of democracy are pretty much removed from the description of Uganda as a state. For instance, what is happening right now is, they went for a free democracy requests for free and fair elections, and so that means if I go to the voting station, I should be able to vote, and whether I announce this vote to the world or not, I have actually voted in secret ballot, but Uganda has not quite had that. In fact, it was said that they are having elections and people are going to the stations to vote, but hours after the polling stations are open, the ballot boxes are not there, the machines are not working, people are getting agitated, people need to leave. Some people's houses, those ones who are well-known supporters of the opposition, the houses are barricaded, they cannot leave. Some states, some districts and provinces where the supporters are mainly of the opposition, they are pretty much the last ones to even vote, if they get to vote. No one is assured that when you cast your vote, it will actually be counted. Everyone is hoping that it will be counted, but no one is assured. So, no, Uganda is definitely not.
Besides the elections, are there any other elements that you point out to point Uganda as being undemocratic?
Yes. So we do know of the tax law that came into effect in Uganda. So pretty much, if you need to use Facebook, there's an amount you're going to pay to the government. Now that restricts the usage of social media a lot. 1, 2, they have state-sanctioned restrictions on what you can post and what you cannot post, and so freedom of speech is curtailed. Freedom of movement is cutting. When people are running for, again, so opposite, you remember when Bobby Wine first wanted to run for, I think MP?
MP,
yeah. He had to do, when he tried to run, he was stopped from running. They came up with all manner of allegations, and then he was stopped. But he had to go behind the system. He had to find the ropes, find the little hitches, and then use that. That is what he used to hoist himself. The party he had formed was disbanded. He had to get into another party. I mean, all these hoops and yet you are in a democracy, are very uncalled for and unnecessary.
How do you compare these to other African states? Because we saw in last year, 2020, we saw also Tanzania was a question of democracy. In Kenya, we've had question of democracy, free and fair election. In Burundi, there's the same case. In Rwanda, the same case of free and fair election. How do you say Uganda is so distinct from these other cases in Africa?
Uganda is not distinct. I think the only thing that comes to mind when I think of Uganda is Museveni. For very many years, Museveni. So at least in these other countries, there is pretense. They try to hide and say, "Oh my God, we voted for another president. Look, there's a different regime." But the other regime comes, and then the same things happen. And the other regime comes, it's the same story of rigged elections. It's the same story of opposition members being, the privacy being violated, their security being infringed upon, them not being able to make they're not able to make decisions which will not then be seen as their political standing. I mean, to be in, let me say, East Africa, to be in East Africa and to attempt to have human rights and to attempt to actually act in accordance of being in a democracy, within a democracy, requires you to jump through hoops, very many hoops, because one will be the executive, then it will be the judiciary, then it will be the legislature, all of which have the face of one person, or in our case, one family. So we are all, when I look at Uganda, I see where we are headed to. Kenya is headed to in 2022. Just, we are not yet sure how that one will play out. I mean, the other elections, the machines failed, right? In the other elections, we had to go, the elections had to be counted in court. And then even after that, there were still stories of rigged elections. Even after that, there were still reports on and people speculating on really how fair and free were these elections. There's still corruption and bribery towards the voters. All these things are happening, and yet we term ourselves as democracy. Then we live in Kenya and say Kenya is better than the rest. No, I think what is happening in Uganda is pretty much a setting pace for Kenya. So we should cry for Uganda and pray that when our time comes, Ugandans cry with us and pray for us as well.
So now getting back to in terms of Museveni. Museveni has been in power since 1986. Is there anything that we can say we are celebrating Museveni? Because we see that he was a general and he toppled Milton Obote to come into power in 1986. Now, what would you say can you attribute to Museveni's achievements so far in the 35 years he's been in power?
I will I'll answer the question with a question. When someone does good, so they do 5 strokes of good, and then they do 6 strokes of bad, what do you remember? That aside, when someone you have a visitor at home, okay, so the visitor came at home, they came carrying goods, serious shopping, like a month worth of shopping, and your house is big with like 75 children, okay, no, 6 children or something, so they have a lot of shopping, and then they said, we're going to stay here, and you welcome them and you tell them, karibu mgeni, siku ya kwanza karibu, siku ya pili, siku ya tatu mpe jembe, and then now you're waiting for results, and then now mgeni imebadilika, nyumba sasa imekuwa yake because alileta shopping the first 3 days. Yeah, will we remember the shopping that this person brought, or will we remember what this person is taking from us at this point? Because if this were 36 years of growth, of actual growth, like people can look and say these are the steps that Uganda has grown and not retrogressed, then I would afford him some praise. But at this point, he's not worthy of that, and that's just I'm talking on my behalf. I do not think he deserves to be praised for any achievement he's done.
So you're implying there's no achievement that...
No, I am not implying that. I am simply saying that he has overstayed his welcome. And if, for instance, he came in and there was introduction of the free education. He kind of enforced that and made sure that school was almost compulsory to attend, right? Now, all these years later, someone who started school, say Bobi Wine for instance, started school after him. Bobi Wine should have been able to go through school without very many hitches. Remember, Bobi Wine is a representation of very, very poor Ugandans, right? He should have been able to go to primary properly, high school properly, university properly. He should have been able to reap directly the benefits of education that were afforded to him. But what we see is someone who is dissatisfied. And it is not just him. It is a generation of people who are wondering, what good has he done? We cannot see it. And if he has done it, Asha Peter, he's cancelled out his good. Yeah.
Now, getting back to Bobi Wine, you've mentioned Bobi Wine earlier on. And You see, he is a contender of presidency in 2021 elections. Now, Bobi Wine is a young Turk. Now, why is it so hard for Ugandans to elect a young Turk in all these years in elections? Considering Uganda has a population, 80% of Ugandans are youthful population, and Uganda has the world's largest youthful population. Why is it so hard?
One, I do not think it is hard for them to elect a youth. It is hard for them to elect anyone who is not Museveni.
Why is it so?
Because that has been so. How many elections have they had? This is 36 years later, yeah? They are supposed to have an election. They're supposed to have an election after every 4 years, yeah? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 36 divided by 4. My maths fails me terribly at this point. But every single time he has run. A man who the general public is not satisfied with. Every single time he has run, he has won. And every single time someone wants to run against him in the opposition, well, once they raise a voice of dissent against him, once people are not for him, they either disappear, they're imprisoned. I mean, look at Stella Nyanzi. She has suffered, you know. Anytime anyone attempts to go against Museveni, it is a problem. So it is not that they have failed to elect another leader, or even they have failed to elect a young person. They have simply failed to get rid of Museveni.
So let's talk about Bobi Wine's influence. How is Bobi Wine's influence to the youth of Uganda and also in Africa? What role does it play?
I can only express hope at this point. I hope that people can see the lead role that a young person who chooses to be conscious about their surrounding is taking. Because unfortunately, we have had several young people who come up. For now, in our case, it would be, say, the name that comes to my mind, no matter how controversial in some circles, his name would be Boniface Mwangi. Yeah. So, in our case, we have had someone who's trying to run for an MP seat, losing terribly. Yeah. And yet, this is the same person who people say, you know what, there's a problem. Oh, my child can't go to school. They text him on Twitter and say the education is failing Sijui, or Sijui who is driving on the wrong side of the road, come help us. But when it comes to voting for this person, it is a problem. Yeah. So I am hoping that Bobi Wine choosing to put his life on the line as he has, and his career and his children's lives and his wife's lives and actually his family's life at stake, I am hoping that the impact will not be lost on Africa. In fact, not on Africa, on Kenya, because we are next in line. I am hoping that people will look back and see the sacrifices that he has made, because of course he will not be forgotten.
You talked about effects in Kenya. How does Ugandan's election affect Kenya and the region of East Africa? How? They say
kichwa cha ukiona mwenzako ananyolewa chako kitie maji.
Yes.
That is how it affects us. In the economic sense, if things go bad, should I say if or when things go bad in Uganda, that is going to have an effect here. What are we going to How are we going to keep on trading in terms of whatever we import from them? How is our relation with Tanzania is already blurry.
Yes.
Uganda was, holding us together. So what happens when Uganda pulls back? So it is not just about the economics, it is also about the politics. And from this election, this might be a ripple of change, or it might be a dream deferred. There's a poem that talks about a dream deferred. What happens to it? Does it die? Does it wither? Is it kept in terms of hope? So this election of theirs, depending on the outcome, would simply, if it still will be Museveni in power, then we know what this looks like for us. So there has to be actual change. If Museveni does not get back to power, then things are going to look up. Whether Bobi Wine has proper policies or not, things are going to look up for East Africa in general.
Okay, so how does East Africa and also the body of African Union, it has been accused of being a dog that does not bite, a toothless dog. Is it true? And how does it influence? Because we've seen African Union In some cases, they come forward. In some cases, they don't. Does it mean African Union has double standards? And how does it act in regards to African democracy in its states?
African Union is not headed by people who are not in power, and it's not headed by people who do not want to hold on to power forever. It is headed by the exact same people who need to control resources. So there is no way. They say set a thief to catch a thief, but this is a band of thieves set to catch a band of thieves as well. How is that going to work? Unless there's a difference in regime, then all these bodies will actually have authority to stamp. Because right now, how do you tell, assuming you're a father, how do you tell your son, say, do not go to brothels, yeah? And your son sees you going to brothels every single evening and morning, and in fact you're the one, maybe even running one. How do you tell them not to do what you're doing? How do you say, don't do what I'm doing, do what I'm saying? It does not work that way. So unless our leadership changes, ECC, we will form another body and another one and another and another one, and it will still be the exact same thing.
So
same story.
These bodies are just there for formalities.
They're just there. They're just there to make people happy, and they're also there to just, I would say, launder money, launder corruption money, but I will say they're there to draw funds, Western funds. Yes, they're there to draw funds.
On the last question, what's your projection and prediction in terms of the Ugandan election? The bound to release results pretty soon.
Yes.
So yeah, what's your projection and prediction?
Again.
Museveni leading with a huge margin.
Unfortunately, he will win. Oh my God, he will win so hard. He might even have a population in Kenya voting for him. But that is unfortunate. I would hope that Bobi Wine wins, or anyone else even who's in the race wins. But I do know that Museveni will win by a landslide. I don't know how large their population is. Probably double their population will vote.
Okay. What's next for Uganda after the elections?
It will either be a sigh of relief and then they wait to see what is new with Bobi Wine, or oh my God, we rebelled against Museveni. Now here is a backlash, and then they're going to go into serious tyranny, and Uganda will almost go into the dark days of Uganda. That's what I see.
That's where we stop it from. Joy Chenyenyozi, thank you so much for coming to the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.